the alternative corner, where we will follow topics of interest other than boxing. At October Red, we always want to engage with our listeners and accommodate what our viewers want to listen to. Feedback is essential. Feel free to tell us yours. Listen in to Episode 8, where we discuss the rise, the scandal, and the reckoning of Prince Andrew, Duke of York. From royal privilege to leaked emails, from the Epstein connection to the principles of Magna Carta 1215. This is the story of power, accountability, and the question of whether the law truly applies to everyone.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are. It's Abs of October Red, and we are here once again with the Alternative Corner. I'll let you know that I'm recording this on Sunday afternoon. Sunday, October the 19th, 2025, but I'm going to put it out on Monday morning. I didn't want to bombard you with stuff. But this is not just stuff. I see this as something that's really relevant. I've been following it from the beginning, from all the years that it started. And I thought, you know what? We're talking about lots of people. Why not the monarch? You know? So without further ado, I believe this is episode 8. We're cooking on gas, as I like to say. And we're going to call this Prince Andrew, the fall of the Duke. I know in the title it says the Duke of York. I know he's been stripped of his titles. I don't know what date it is, if it's immediate stripping, who knows. But yeah, he's still got his prince title, hasn't he? So we'll start. Prince Andrew, born into power. No choice. He was born, he's the son of Queen Elizabeth II. A man raised in privilege, obviously being a royal, he would be. A scandal that shook the monarchy to its core. And this is not just about one royal, it's about power, accountability, and whether the law truly applies to everyone. This is a story of Prince Andrew, the rise, the fall, and the question that refuses to go away. Royal beginnings then. Andrew Albert Christian Edward was born February the 19th, 1960, inside Buckingham Palace, one of the children of the late Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. Unlike his elder brother King Charles III, Andrew grew up with fewer expectations of the throne, but enjoyed the full power and privilege of royalty. And let's be honest, who wouldn't? He attended Gordonstoun School in Scotland, where he earned a reputation for being outgoing and confident. The tabloids, the media, as we do, later nicknamed him Randy Andy for his party lifestyle, a foreshadowing of the media attention that would define much of his life. I do remember that back in the day, Randy Andy. It's funny that, isn't it? Military service, public image. In 1979, Prince Andrew joined the Royal Navy and trained as a helicopter pilot. During the Falklands War in 1982, he served aboard HMS Invincible, taking part in active missions. So he wasn't just one of these that had a medal for nothing. He was involved in an actual war. For a moment, British public saw him as a brave young prince, a war hero in fact, a man stepping out of his brother's shadow. We get that with families, don't we? You tend to be in the shadow of the elder siblings, and that puts a lot of pressure. So him doing his own thing, making his own way, kind of sets you apart, doesn't it? And albeit you are family members, you start to get viewed as the individual that you are. So July the 23rd, 1986, Andrew married Sarah, Duchess of York, in a lavish royal ceremony watched by millions. I was one of them. I remember watching the ceremony. They had 2 daughters, Princess Beatrice in 1988 and Princess Eugenie in 1990. They were dubbed the fun couple of the royal family, bringing energy and relatability to the monarchy. You know, you saw these two as quite down to earth, approachable in some points. But by 1992, their marriage had begun to unravel. They separated, divorced in 1996. Yet, and I'm not friends with any of my exes, credit to you that are, maintained an unusually close relationship, often living under the same roof years later. Not something that I'll do, but each to their own. The royal role, but also the beginning of cracks. As Duke of York at the time, Andrew carried out official royal duties, became a UK trade envoy and represented Britain at events worldwide. So he's the face. He's the face of the royal family, face of the UK. So a lot comes with that. But behind the scenes, his social circle began to raise eyebrows. Foreign oligarchs, businessmen, potentially with questionable backgrounds, and eventually a man whose name that would haunt Andrew forever. Jeffrey Epstein. Their friendship, it's been called many different things, but we'll say it's a friendship. Andrew's friendship with Epstein began in the late 1990s. The financier was already connected to powerful figures across politics, business and entertainment. He was like what you'd call the plug. In 2008, Epstein was convicted of sex offences in the US, but in 2010, 2 years later after the conviction, Andrew was photographed walking with him in New York Central Park. You know, when I saw that picture, I remember when it was on the, it was broadcast and it was put on the news, I thought, has he been set up to be seen with Epstein to take those pictures? I mean, unless you're like totally oblivious, you know that this guy's, convicted sex offender, but you're still choosing to have a public relationship with him, knowing that you are of royal blood, your royal family. Shouldn't have really done that. And I mean, and if you're going to have a meeting, not that I'm condoning him meeting him, by the way, but why do it in a public place like that? Central Park, come on. I've been to New York. That park is always packed, always full of people. How was the Prince and Jeffrey Epstein just walking around casually in that park having a conversation? Notice that the expressions in the photograph as well, because you can look at this online, it's like Andrew gesturing to Epstein. You can see they're both in conversation, but you see that open palm gesturing to, suggest that what they were talking about was potentially deep, interesting, important even. So yeah, I thought that was a bit of a weird one, but whatever. So that image is the image that's burned into our brains. I'm sure you can actually picture it now as I'm talking. And it's them two obviously strolling together in the park after all the scandal was starting to come out regarding Epstein. So then we move on to Virginia Giuffre, who alleges that she was trafficked by Epstein as a minor. She alleged that she was forced to have sexual intercourse with the prince at the age of 17. The famous photograph, which has been denied, called Photoshop. I don't remember. Remember we've been talking about Noel Clarke that says, I don't remember that happening. And the judge saying, I don't believe you. But in this case, didn't meet such a robust or, to be fair, any kind of investigation. A now famous photograph that shows Andrew with his arm around her waist, with his Epstein's co-accused, Ghislaine Maxwell, smiling in the background. Looking at the photo on its surface, nothing sinister about it, but obviously it's a story behind it. Prince Andrew repeatedly denied ever meeting Guthrie and claimed that the photo might even be fake. He even gave a disastrous interview to BBC Newsnight in 2019, insisting he couldn't sweat and was at a pizza restaurant at the night of the alleged assault. So, my thing is, and whatever, I believe that he went against his PR team. That interview that he did on BBC Newsnight, and kudos to them for getting it out because it was very entertaining. I've watched it a couple of times. Not entertaining for the victims, I may add, but entertaining to listen to his story and the real good questioning from the interviewer that basically was trying to undermine everything that he was saying. Is the fact that he was publicly interviewed on television rather than having a private investigation by the law, but we'll come on to that. It was his decision. He wanted to put it out there, prove that, you know, he's not this guy that they're portraying him to be. He's got nothing to do with Epstein, etc., etc. So in 2021, Guthrie filed a civil lawsuit in the US and was settled out of court in 2022. 12 million. Okay. Andrew admitted to wrongdoing, but he never faced criminal charges. When you settle, when you've got a claim and they'll pay you off basically to be quiet, often that is, and quite rightly so, should be associated with guilt. Because otherwise people can say what they want. A lot's been said already. You know, say what you want, it's not true. There's a lot out there. So why was this case settled? Yeah. So it carries on. It just doesn't seem to go away, does it? So 2025 now, we've got leaked emails. I've been watching The Heretics with a royal correspondent who I believe has written a book as well. Might be a good read. So we've had some leaked emails now. It's the timing of these emails coming out. It's almost like we've been drip fed certain things like this. The emails were already there. The email in its entirety was already there. But we've been drip fed over the years different parts of these said emails. Who knows? I don't know, because obviously I'm not the one leaking them. So in early 2025, leaked private emails surfaced from 2011, but it doesn't paint a very good picture at all. Just months after the now infamous photo became public, Prince Andrew allegedly wrote to Epstein, "We are in this together and we will have to rise above it." Okay? A direct contradiction to his public claim that he'd cut off contact in 2010. Okay? So saying one thing to the public, doing something in private. Other correspondence, and like I said, people do these things all the time, and they do. They go on a certain way in public that they don't like a person, but then in private they're sending him messages saying, "Oh yeah, you know, I can't really show myself out to support you because you know what's been said about you, etc." People do that. Not me, but people actually do that. But he's just not people, is he? He's a member of the royal family and he represents the United Kingdom. So other correspondence suggesting that he acknowledged it was a possible he had met Guthrie in a group, again contradicting his TV statements. More damaging still, the reports emerged that Andrew allegedly attempted to use a police protection officer to obtain Guthrie's personal data Andrew once again denies his allegations. Now, it's alleged that he had one of his private security and that person was a member in the Metropolitan Police. I will remind you that there's a recent documentary that's come out regarding the Metropolitan Police, which is highlighting racism, misogyny, and all the other bad things that shouldn't be associated with a police force. We know as well from the Stephen Lawrence inquiry that the said force allegedly, I think, employed a undercover officer to try and find dirt on the family of Stephen Lawrence so they could paint a terrible picture of him in the media, which would almost justify him being killed. Strong allegations that, but it's there, go and look for it. So hearing that doesn't really surprise me. I'm not saying it's true. All of this is alleged. However, you have to look at patterns. We've looked at patterns with Noel Clarke. The judge looks at patterns with Noel Clarke. We have to apply those universally. Excuse me, got a bit of a cough. We can't just say, oh, it's that person, so it applies definitely to them. But when it's somebody else in a higher position, when we look at everybody, we're on this sort of pyramid hierarchy, aren't we? Oh, no, it's alleged. It's not necessarily true. These revelations strike at the heart of his credibility, and they raise a bigger question, not just about one man, but about accountability when power and privilege are involved. The royal correspondent I mentioned earlier, he's a royal biographer, I do beg your pardon, Andrew Lowney's findings. He'd spent years investigating Prince Andrew's ties with Epstein, and he's released a book entitled The Rise and Fall of the House of York. He claims that Andrew's association with Epstein began earlier, lasted longer, and was closer than publicly acknowledged. Like I said, you can obviously go and read his book. I haven't yet, but I've watched his interview with the Heretics channel on YouTube. To be fair, I could post the link in the description so you can go and have a look at it yourself. It's worth notice, and it is worth noting, and remember, like I said, these are allegations. Yeah, remember, fair society and all that. The publisher later withdrew and corrected specific unverified claims unrelated to the core Epstein narrative, showing the scrutiny and legal pressure surrounding this story. But Lowney's central thesis remains that Andrew's world was built on entitlement and that accountability never truly reached him. January 2022, Buckingham Palace announced that Andrew would lose all his honorary military titles and royal patronages. He would no longer use the style His Royal Highness in any official capacity. He was effectively exiled from public life, retreating to Royal Lodge in Windsor. It's tough, that, isn't it? Retreating to a Royal Lodge. With 2025 leaks, insiders report that King Charles III and Prince William, Prince of Wales, have taken an even harder stance behind palace doors. Discussions about further restrictions, I beg your pardon, even the possibility of removing his title, so Prince, have surfaced, though this would require parliamentary action. We're going to cover some of the parliamentary stuff as well. Remember, like I said, allegedly behind closed doors. This, I am telling you from the sources, the information that I've got, which is publicly available for you guys to look at and make your own decision. So what would or what could happen legally? Because of the Guthrie case was civil and settled, Andrew faces no current charges. And this is the thing, and I want to bring this up because the same thing happened with Cassie and Puff Daddy, but the whole of that case really centralised around her. She should not have been allowed to give evidence because it was settled civilly, in my opinion. But whatever, that's the USA, we're talking about the UK. But leaked emails and allegations of police misuse could change that. Potential legal paths then. If evidence is verified, it could reopen an investigation. Misconduct or data protection violations, reputational accountability through Parliament, not just the Crown. But whether any of this will happen it depends on political will, legal thresholds, and the courage of institutions to apply the law equally. And that's where we move on to something, because I want to tell you a little story. I like telling little stories. We have what we call in this country, and I think the American Constitution is built on it as well. It's the rule of law. Yeah. Magna Carta is where it started in 1215. We had a king and his name was John. It's about 800 years ago. It was a long, long time ago. And King John was a bit selfish. He was going around taxing people heavily. I know we pay tax now, don't get me wrong, but he was literally taking people's money off them. He wasn't winning wars, wasn't particularly known as being a good king, and basically just took the mick, throwing people in jail. There was no justice, there was nothing. You know, it was somebody's words, they believed it, no trial, that's it, off to jail, off with the head, whatever the punishments were back then. So the barons, which you could say now, potentially, if you want to include the barons in 1215, potentially they're like the lords that we have in the House of Lords now. They said, you need to stop this. We are getting sick of you treating the public like this. We need to place legal limits on the king. And in 1215, the Magna Carta law was signed. And basically, it means no one is above the law. That means no one. Because they had to limit the king's power. We live in a democracy. I've gone on about this forever. But that is the law. So 800 years ago, like I said, a simple principle was written into the fabric of English law. And this is what it was then. It's been modified now, but this is what it was. To no one will we sell, to no one deny or delay right or justice. That just means everyone should be treated equally, and everyone should have a right to a fair trial and to be brought to justice. Magna Carta 1215. So it means no person, royal or commoner, stands above justice. If fully applied today, then Prince Andrew would face the same legal process as any other citizen. A transparent investigation, public accountability, and no immunity through birthright. But Britain's unwritten constitution and centuries-old royal privilege have created a system where power still bends the process. So even though the law is written, there's things that stop that from actually happening. From decorated naval officer to a potentially disgraced prince, from palace hallways to leaked emails, Prince Andrew's story is no longer just about a personal scandal. It's about, and this is my opinion, a constitutional question. Does power protect or does the law prevail? And as Britain looks at its monarchy through a sharper lens, that question will define more than just one man's legacy. If justice is real, then it must be blind. And I ask you guys, as I do, to like, share, do all that good stuff. Ask hard questions. You're a citizen of this country and you're allowed to. I will say once again to subscribe to the channel and have a look at our alternative corner. This is it, where we look at other things other than boxing, concentrating on cases or potential cases, past, present, and potentially this one could be one in the future. Power, law, and truth. So let me know what you think in the comments, you guys. I do appreciate your time. If you've got this far, thank you so much. I hope you had a cracking weekend, and I look forward to having a positive week ahead. I'll try and make it as positive as I can. I hope you guys will do the same for yourselves. I've got to shout out my sponsors, SAUK, Maximum Security, Minimum Fuss. Let me know what your thoughts are on this. I would say try and keep it respectful in the comments, as you all do, to be fair. But we're going to talk about everything, all different types of cases, and I really would like your input. But for now, as we say at October Red, stay ready.
Thank you for listening to The Alternative Corner. Most of our listeners have not yet subscribed. We kindly ask you for your support by subscribing to our channel and to share our content. October Red is sponsored by SAUK, Maximum Security, Minimum Fuss.